Karen said, I was fascinated by her accomplishments over a short period of time. After the talk, I immediately read one of her first books, To Dance in the Glen, one of her Highland romances, and I loved it. That was Karen saying that. Michelle has written 9 novels and 6 novellas. 2 of her books have won awards. To Dance in the Glen was an author Academy Award winner and an Amazon bestseller. And The Lady of the Glen was a top 50 indie reads of 2019. Congratulations, Michelle. Michelle teaches English, rhetoric, and literature at Mount San Jacinto College, Palomar College, and at National University. She has also worked with several local charter schools to teach writing and literature to middle and high school students. Several books of her writing curriculum are also available on Amazon. Michelle lives in Southern California with her husband, Michael. Is that you, Michael? Wave. And there are 5 kids and 6 pets. So with that busy of a household, I can't imagine anybody better able to talk with us about productivity, time management, and motivation. So everyone, please welcome Michelle Dalrymple. And yeah, there you go. Okay, good.
Okay. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
First of all, this was fascinating for me because I have heard about writing guilds. I used to live in Chicago, and I knew of a couple out there, but I did not know of one out here until Karen reached out to me and spoke to me about it. So I'm hoping to join. I'm very excited. So thank you for that. Just the introduction to the group makes me very excited. And Karen and Lynn have been very flattering to me about, what I've been doing. There's a little bit of, to me, it doesn't seem like a whole lot. But when you read the list, it does sound like a lot. So I will start out by saying that I was not always this productive. When I was, of course, younger, I wrote poetry and short stories. I had some of them published when I was in high school. I got into college on a poem that I wrote. So that always was a kind of a sense of pride for me. But then, college and grad school, kept me busy. And then I got married and started having kids right after grad school. And so a lot of stuff was just shoved to the side. I have like a checklist of stuff I'm going to kind of go over, kind of like a transcript. So I'll go ahead and email it to Lynn when I'm done, because there's lots of there's some links and some notes and recommendations. So that way you don't have to write as fast as you can to try to get it all down. As a college professor, I know that can be difficult to get all the notes down. But my first book, To Dance in the Glen, so that's this bad boy right here, man chest. It took me about 15 years to write and kind of get edited, get the book cover right, just really do anything much with it. It was really just a stop and go sort of process. I would be inspired to write, so I would sit down and then I would go weeks or months without doing anything. So it was really a laborious process, if you will, just extended. It didn't really, so the idea of being productive is not something that happened suddenly. It's only something, or that happened over a course of time. It's only happened recently, within the past 4 or 5 years, where I've really, well, maybe 7 or 8 years. I'm forget that time passes and it's no longer 2014. It's only been something recently. So I know that a lot of people are like, well, I will never be able to be that way. I've always been a slow writer. I've always been, and those are kind of just, odd thoughts that you might just want to shift, because really anybody can shift their mindset about being because that's what I would tell people for years. I'm a slow writer. I'm a lazy writer. I would tell my students that in class, I get it. I'm a slow writer. That was my theme for the class for years and years and years, because I was being a slow writer. So it did take me 15 years to get the first book done. Kids, life, the world, jobs, family, everything, it gets in the way. It totally does. But after that, I got the first book and I really started diving into different groups. Some of them were on Facebook. Some of them were affiliated with the college I was teaching at. But once I kind of dove in, I can be a little like type A with certain things, and it just really, like, I wanted to learn as much as I could about writing, about different publishing options, about, editing, about, stories, just everything that I could. And so that's really what kind of took over. And once I became really invested, then things started moving a little more smoothly. That was like the grease, if you will, that kind of got things rolling. So here are some things about me. So there are like 3 bullet points here that I was asked to touch on. Time management, productivity, and then what's the other one I have highlighted? Oh, motivation. Okay, so the first one I have on my list is time management, because I think that's one of the big ones. I know that everybody has, these other, parts of their life that easily take over, especially if you still are working like a full-time job. I teach at 3 colleges, so I'm teaching anywhere from like 6 to 8 classes a semester. And it helps that I am already in the kind of writing, editing, publishing field because of my teaching. But let me tell you, after I've had to grade 8 essays in one day, the last thing I want to do is go and edit a book that I've been working on, because the idea of, I'm like, I'm done. I'm so done looking at bad English. And so it does, it does get to be a bit of a drag. But that being said, I'm also very quick at it because I've had to learn all these tricks because of grading and making sure that students got their essays back in a week and the like. So I won't lie, just my career field has helped just with some kind of automatic habits that I have. So if you're in a field where you're like that, where you have to give quick turnaround feedback or anything like that, you can actually use that to kind of channel it. So with regards to ideas, they come pretty regularly. Like Lynn mentioned, you look for ideas everywhere. If I'm watching a TV show, even like an older TV show, or we're watching a movie, or I'm reading a book, if there's a character that I like, or an event or a scene in the book that I like, or a theme that I like, I make notes of it. Like you guys, you probably have 80 million of these bad boys, 80 million notebooks that are filled. So, and then I just, make notes of that scene. And I'm like, oh, I like that scene. I wonder what would happen if, and then you use it as a launching point. The books that she referenced, I'll even just go to like different, like outside my genres, more historical or romance. And I'll see something in like a sci-fi or a fantasy or the like, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, that would be such a good, I could use it like this. And then I make a note of it. And so I'm always just kind of jotting down note ideas, which helps with time management. And if you can try to write them down in like the same spot for a while, I was a mom, so I was using a crayon and writing on a napkin to get ideas down if something came to me. I won't lie, it was a disaster. It was a disaster. I still just have loose leaf, like just where things were, and who knows what's in there. So for time management, the first thing I'm going to do is dispel some myths, because I think we get certain things stuck in our head that, oh, I'm not a writer if, or I'm supposed to do this because, and I think that those trappings can kind of hold us back a little bit when it comes to, managing our time. So the first one is, you don't have to write every day. I'll be perfectly honest with you. And I think a lot of times we feel defeated if we don't get a certain amount of writing done in a day. And then that kind of puts like a stopper on us from getting other writing done. So even if we do have a block of time, we don't necessarily take advantage of it like we should, because we get that kind of self-fulfilling prophecy sort of defeatist thing going on. And if you try to hold yourself accountable to that, where it's like, well, if I didn't write today, then I got to write 3 times, I haven't written in 2 days, I got to write 3 times more today. That can become arduous, and it becomes a process that we don't look forward to. We don't get excited about sitting down saying, all right, I'm gonna write this scene, this is gonna be so exciting. We don't get that idea, we don't get that sort of thrill going on, that serotonin dump. And it can be very defeatist. So don't feel bad. I do try to write every day, at least a little bit, but there are some days I don't. On Thursday, I had a meeting with a colleague, and it was really windy out. We were outside, and I was done by 9 o'clock. And normally I'm a stay up till 1 a.m. kind of gal. So it was very, a little like, okay, I just didn't get stuff done today. It is what it is, move on from that. So if you're ever in that cycle where you're like, okay, I'm not getting writing done, or I'm struggling to get that writing, how can I find bits of time to write more? even if you're just thinking about book ideas or what are you going to do with your character and you're taking those notes, that's writing. Okay. I consider that in my time management, that's part of my process. So, you know, I could be watching TV with the kids or making dinner and I'm still like that thought process is going on. And I consider that writing time. I know that's maybe kind of a weird thing. A lot of people are like, we're not actually writing. Yeah, but where the idea is going to come from. I mean, you know, you can't just sit down and they don't magically appear as much as we would like. They don't just magically appear on the screen. So, and if you can, then, you know, as soon as you get the first chance, take some notes down. You can also edit instead of write. You know, they say you can't edit a blank page, but if you've got something written and you don't have time to write or the inspiration isn't there or you got busy, but you have the opportunity to sit down and get something done, maybe work on your revision process. Okay. You know, again, you don't have to write every day, but you also can't, you know, you need to revise what you're writing. You know, that's the like worst part of writing, at least for me. It's like, and especially if you have more than one book in the process. I don't know how many of you are just like a one book at a time kind of writer. And then you have like the ADD writers that like have 80 million projects going on. I'm an ADD writer. Okay. So I have 80 million projects at a time. And then I got this guy here. So I'm always editing. I'm his publisher is essentially what it is. So I got his editing to do. So I do a lot of stinking editing. And so I consider that writing time as well. So that way I don't feel that sort of, oh, I didn't get time to write today. Well, I did. It just wasn't like I wasn't composing necessarily. So, and then with regards to like goals and you're like, okay, I have a deadline or I have, you know, I want to get this book done by XYZ time. Look at it in terms of like weeks. Like, okay, I have 4 weeks. About how many words do I need to write each week? Because there's going to be some days where you have a lot more time. And instead of trying to say, well, I have a daily writing requirement for myself. And then again, you don't hit that requirement, you feel defeated, et cetera. And it kind of feeds into that vicious cycle. What I do is I'm like, okay, in this week, I want to try to get a certain number of words written. Now, I've also done things like played with my keyboard size to get the best keyboard for my typing speed. I found that if I can type on an iPad with the iPad sized keyboard, I can write up to 2,000 words or more in an hour. And yeah, and especially like, and at night, I'm really, I mean, but I would even take it with me to class. And if students had like an in-class essay exam, I'd get the exam going, open up my keyboard and start typing. And while they're taking, you know, an essay exam for an hour and a half, you know, I was getting, you know, 2,500 words down. So nice double dipping right there. But they, so I found that, you know, making sure I have the right keyboard to meet any of my goals. Like I have my laptop here that I'm on, but I use that mostly for editing and then all my other stuff. Most of my composing is on my tablet, my iPad, because that size keyboard, I can just type really, really fast on it. It's just, you know, and then I upload it to Google Docs. I download it onto my laptop. And from there, I either maybe I put it in Scrivener or I, you know, convert it to whatever I'm doing. But take those, use like a weekly goal, because we most of the time have at least one day during the week where we know we're going to have a little more free time. If you work full time, maybe it's on your weekends. If you have kids, maybe it's while the kid, well, I would say while the kids are in school, but maybe while they're on their Zoom school or they're playing. So you really, it's hard right now to like go out. I know you might have been the type that goes to like a coffee shop or to a library to focus and write. And I know right now, a lot of times I'll go outside in my backyard and that way I'm out of the house. So that whole different environment. And I'll just sit, we have like a lounger and then like a table, and depending on my mood, I'll sit out there. I'll have your, okay. Are you guys hearing me okay? Someone can't hear me. Okay, someone's got, I'm sorry, it might be laggy. Well, I have it all on a transcript. So if you miss anything, I've got your back. So that might also help with getting out of like the house, especially this past year, we've been like locked in our house. So even just going in the backyard or going to a park, you know, and my tablet's easy to carry with me. If I know that I have to go somewhere and I'm going to be waiting at all, I'll take my tablet with me. And that way I can write, you know, when my kid's in like a doctor visit or at a sporting event. I did that a lot. if I knew I was going to be waiting. When I got my COVID shot, I knew I had to wait those 15 minutes, had my laptop out, 15 minutes of typing. And it's smaller and more portable to be able to do that. I find that's my next thing, is to find those pockets of time. It used to be I would bring a book and I would read in those times. Now it's like maybe 50 or 40, 60 for reading versus writing. But I would find those little pockets, weird pockets of time. And I would just always make sure I had my tablet with me, so that way I could use that pocket of time. We have a lot of weird pockets of time where we're having to sit and wait. And so I started stealing those. And there we go. Okay. Oh, good. Okay, good. You can hear me again. So look for those little pockets of time. And I mean, even plan for them. That's what I do too, is I plan for them. If I know I have somewhere I'm going and I'm going to have a little bit of a wait, I bring that tablet with me. A big thing that I'm just starting to do more of, I struggle with it because it's weird. Some writers are very comfortable with this. Most writers aren't, though, because we talk through our hands, if you will. It's the fingers on the keyboard or the finger with the pen. But I've started doing this. I've written one whole book this way for one of my contemporary series. Now I got to revise the crap out of it because it doesn't read the way I want. But I highly recommend dictation. If you're driving for a long distance in the car, a lot of times when I walk, I go for a 3 or 4 mile walk several times a week. I have my my phone, like the little holder things, like up here by my face, and I just hit the record button and I tell myself the story, for that segment or that section. It's not great. It's really horrible, and it takes a lot of editing, and there's like huge gaps. And so there's, I think, a lot more revision in it. So I'm dreading that. I've got most of the story down, but I haven't started the revision. I'm dreading it. But I wrote like almost 30,000 words just walking. And, that's an hour or two during a day where I wouldn't have been able to do anything. I can't walk and type. But if I'm willing to talk to myself, and I figure I do that anyway, I'm a talker. If I talk too fast, I apologize. I'm a fast talker. The joke is my poor husband doesn't get a word in edgewise. But he does. He can talk almost as much as I can. Don't I can see you, you stinker. The kids talk fast, a lot of talkers in the house. So I figure, well, if I would be telling myself a story or talking to myself anyway, why not record it? And that's also a technique I use with some of my students. I have students who are auditory learners as opposed to visually processing learners, and they struggle to write. So I tell them, what do you want to write about, or what do you think about this? And they tell me. I said, okay, you're going to do the same thing at home and record yourself, type what you record. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant. I never thought of that. So that's another way to take advantage of a pocket of time. If you have a long drive, or you're going for a walk, or you're walking your dog, hit that record button. There's a bunch of great apps that you can download for that. I have 2 different ones. So in case one is kind of glitchy or something, and they're like $1 or $2. Yeah, or a dictation device. Chuck's holding up his dictation device. That, if you can get one of those, it's great. So, and then people even have them for the computer. I think there's one, it's called, I'm going to draw a blank, Dragon. I think you might be familiar with it. But they're supposed to be really good because, but I wasn't able to find an app for it on my phone. So I had to use some different ones, but it's right there on my head. But if you want to dictate into your computer, a lot of people use that Dragon software because it really modulates to your voice really well, so you don't get weird sentences. So, and some of those higher end dictation devices, and what it'll do is it will talk to text. So as I'm talking, it's typing it out, and then I just upload it to Google Docs, and then I can do whatever I need to with it. So that's the cool thing, is I don't have to then type what I listen to. It's already typed. It's horribly typed. Words are merged. I'm like, what was I saying there? That's not even English. I don't know what that is. So, but that's another great way to take advantage of those pockets of time. So let's see. Take advantage of different technology and keyboards. And then it's so funny, Lynn talked about the resource books. That's H on my list of grab rating resource books, like the Emotion Thesaurus. I also have like phrase books for romance writers. All the different genres have them. So if you write sci-fi or fantasy or paranormal or historical, they have like phrase books for you, because we do get stuck in writing where it seems like we're saying the same thing over and over across different books. And I'm like, okay, I cannot write it that way. I cannot use that description that way again, because I've used it 18 times, in my last, 5 books. There's got to be something different. And so it will give you like phrases. And of course, you're going to change them or fix them or alter them to fix your book, but it'll give you huge chunks of language that you can then use to put into your book and help craft when maybe you get stuck, you get that writer's block and you don't know what you're going to do. You feel like you're saying the same thing. Those really are great ways to get past the writer's block. Or if you don't have a lot of time to write, I'll grab one of those. I'm like, okay, I need a jumping off point. I need to say it differently, and I'll use those books. So those are some of my little tricks. Those are my time management tricks that I actually use. I use all of those. My schedule is a bit odd right now. I thought it'd be great to give you kind of like a, what does my day look like for like writing? But right now I'm teaching from home due to the COVID situation. So I'm doing Zoom meetings. So I'm not having to drive to a class and teach for 2 hours and, that kind of thing. So normally, like, I would frame what I'm doing here around those classroom times. Or I would take advantage of the classroom times if they're doing an essay in class or they're doing a writing activity in class, kind of the monkey see, monkey do. I'm like, if you're writing, I'm writing, you guys are writing in class, I'll write in class. And I think a lot of students kind of got a kick out of that, because they'd ask me, what are you doing? I'd say, well, I'm writing. You're writing, I'm writing. And I think a lot of students got a real, it made writing more real for them, that I wasn't just telling them to write, I was actually doing it with them. So I think they like that. So there's a couple other like things that are going on. Like, my kids are older. When they were younger, I didn't do as much writing. 2 of my children are my stepchildren. They're my son's boys. So 2 of my boys aren't here about 3.5 days a week. So that takes kind of them out of the equation for some of my obligations. My other 3 are technically adults, but yeah, we're not quite there yet. We're getting there. But they all still live at home. So I really didn't start getting aggressive into like this writing and publishing and really getting myself out there until my youngest was 16. And then I'm also have horrible ADD, and which is why I have notes here. Otherwise, we would have gone off the rails so far. But as a result of that, I also find it difficult to do nothing. Like, if I'm just watching TV, usually I'm doing something else as well. It's very difficult for me to just sit. And I think my hubby's the same way. Like, even if he's just watching TV, he's got a small like mini laptop, and he'll be typing away or doing whatever as he's, watching TV. We will kind of have our downtime, but for the most part, we're not really good at just doing nothing. So like, I feel like I have to be active. And I know that does play into this a little bit, to be able to just, write and edit and just keep that train going. So this is kind of what I do during the week. In the morning, I wake up, I am not a morning person. Oh, and to top it off, I don't drink coffee. I don't drink coffee, not a coffee person. So this energy is just, it's like Stephen Colbert's The Word, where he's giving the thing and then you have the statement next to him. If you ever watched the Colbert Report. Yeah, so he's The Word back there. But I don't drink coffee. So, my students are always like, I'm sorry, you come into an 8 a.m. class like this with no coffee? Yeah, no coffee. So when I wake up, I my meds I have to take, I have my morning routine, I have some things. I usually work out or walk or whatever, get myself breakfast. And if I can't follow that, like, I feel like my whole day is off. So that usually kills like 2 hours in the morning. And then if I'm teaching, I have to wake up a little bit earlier, or I have to do it after I get back from class. So it's always a little bit of chaos. So, but late morning, usually by about 10 o'clock, I'm like, okay, I got to sit down, and I'm doing one of 2 things in that time. I'm either writing or grading, or editing or grading. And I try to block out like 2 hours so I can just plow through everything. And then it kind of helps clear, that way I know my afternoon is, okay, whatever I want to do, because I got that huge chunk of whatever it was done. And it kind of gives me the rest of my day. usually around lunchtime, I get some cleaning done because I have 80 million kids and pets. And none of them know how to use a toilet brush. Anyway, so I have a light lunch. Lucky they load the dishwasher or empty. And then I give myself a little bit of a break. By early afternoon, I'm either into another round of writing or grading or editing or grading, whatever it is. And that's usually when I try to go outside. I'm like, okay, get out of the house, you know, especially if it's like I'm not in class or it's like summer break or, you know, I'm in between classes. It's easy to get, you know, caught up with stuff. And then if I'm outside the house, I'm not getting caught up with stuff inside the house. So I found that, like, you know, if you go to a coffee shop, you're not dealing with the stuff at home. So it's easier to focus, kind of the same mental process. So I try to go out, be on the patio, get some sunlight, fresh air that also invigorating, kind of wakes you up, all that good stuff. Find my zen. Late afternoon. Okay, so I'm at that phase of life where that's like, you know, I'm usually feeling like I need a nap or something. So I don't know what's going on with that. And I had a recent stint in the hospital, really, really bad. My recovery's been slow. So by like 3 o'clock, I'm usually kind of laying down and resting a little bit. I might grab my laptop, and that's when I may be doing some marketing and promotions, or I try to do some self-care, whatever it is. But I'm like, okay, I need a little bit of like to recharge a little bit. We usually eat dinner between 5 and 6, somewhere in that frame of mind. If it's during the week, my husband is usually coming home from work around that time, so then I'll hang out with him. But he goes to bed pretty early because he's got to be up at 4 in the morning. So then I'm back on either the computer or my laptop, and usually nighttime is my big push. So from about, he'll usually fall asleep between 6 and 7. Love you, honey, but we're gonna be honest here. You say like 9 to 10, but yeah, that's not happening. So, you know, he's usually, you know, night at 7. So I'll do my big push between 7 p.m. and like 1 in the morning. That's usually my really, really big push. And that's like, you know, 5-6 hours of just, if I'm grading, getting the grading done. If I'm writing, getting the writing done. If I'm writing and editing, it's a mixable. And I'll jump from my laptop to my tablet and do that kind of stuff to do both. And I'll do all of it. I'll do writing, editing, and my grading just intermingled. I'll take short breaks in between. I'm like, okay, I got this much written. I need to get some grading done, whatever it is. But that's my really big push. And then, so that's kind of what my schedule looks like for, you know, my writing and to get stuff done. And then on this, this transcript sheet that I've got with my notes, I have a link because there's a lot of really great resources on there with other like tips and recommendations to find those pockets of time or how to set up your own writing routine. I don't know how many of you actually like have it set out during the day where you have a certain schedule, or if you're like how I was when I was earlier, like a fly by the seat of your pants. If I'm, hey, I have some time today and I feel like writing, and that's, you know, whatever works for you, because, you know, someone can give you a schedule, but if it doesn't work for you, you're not going to follow it. You know, it's kind of like with anything else, like a diet or a workout program, or, you know, a school, a class or anything. You got to find that schedule that works best for you. So I can tell you mine and why I do certain things, but you really, that's what you need to do, is like find what schedule is going to work best for me based off what I have to do during the day, or, you know, my energy levels, or when I go to bed or wake up. Some people are early morning. I could never understand that when people be like, oh, I woke up at 4 in the morning to write. And I'm like, yeah, my brain isn't on at 4 in the morning. You know, not a morning person. So on this info sheet that I have a link to, there's some really great resources out there where they encourage you to go with them to help publish your books. And there might be some cost involved. You might be paying for the editing. And when you're like an indie or hybrid publishing, you know, the authors are paying more for the upfront cost because you don't have a publisher paying for it, but then you keep all the profits. So that's kind of, you know, the catch-22 there with that. But even with traditional publishing now, we're seeing that the writers have to do most of the work anyway. And so there's starting to become a real interesting shift in like power structures with regards to thinking, oh, I have to go traditional versus, you know what, there's so many resources out there. And there's places like Readsy and BookBaby and like Hidden Gems and organizations like that, where they offer a whole suite of author services. and you pay for them to help you with your editing or with your, the formatting of your book, or help you with your book cover, and you pay for that selection of suites. You can also use Fiverr, and they help you. But to encourage people to use their services, they provide a lot of stuff for free. And BookBaby is one that I belong to their newsletter, and they send me like recommendations, tips. And of course, they're then trying to sell a product at the end, but I'm like, I'm getting the free tips from you anyway. So one thing I got just this week, and I'm like, oh, putting that in my notes because I can use it when I talk. They have a resource on like 10 different ways that you can like tweak or, create like a writing routine. And I have that in my notes. So when that goes out, you can click on that and take a look at it. But it's from BookBaby. Okay, so point number 2 is how to stay motivated during COVID. Oh man, a body at rest tends to stay at rest. Holy cow. Some of the stuff I already talked about was a little bit with my motivation. I won't lie, I also have a wonderful perk that my kids help me a lot. My 19-year-old is my publicity assistant, which also means helping clean the house when mommy needs to get work done. But so I hired her. She'll also do some beta reading for me. She'll also, when she does the beta reading, she'll also like catch some grammar mechanics, things that I don't. So she'll do that for me periodically. But she also has access to my Facebook page. So she'll, a lot of times when I'm posting in groups or I'm promoting something, if I need to put together packages, she comes with me when I do book signings and she helps me sell my books. Or if I need to leave, she watches the table for me. She helps me unload everything. If I'm doing a big giveaway or if I have to ship books out, she's helping me get that done. So I pay her to help me with all of that. She's my kind of go-to. And in fact, she's been doing a little bit of work over the last week and into this coming week because I have a new release coming out at the end of the month on the 31st. And so she's been going into the different social media sites and she's been promoting it. And, so she'll do a lot of that with me. My 21-year-old is an artist, so they help me with the cover creation. And so I don't necessarily have to pay a whole lot for book covers, maybe to get them formatted because my 21-year-old, helps me do that. So I'm fortunate that they help keep me going because they want to earn their money and they'll be like, Mom, what are we doing? Do you have another book? I want to edit. I need to make, because I pay them for this. So it's kind of nice to have the kids lighting a fire under my butt a little bit. I belong to some great writing groups on Facebook. I have found some amazing friends. And in fact, I'm doing a really, really big event. I did it in 2019, 20 and 21 were nope. But another big one's coming up in 22. And if you write in a certain niche, you might want to see if there's something like this available to you. But if you like historical fiction, particularly historical romance, there is a gigantic convention. It's going to be in San Diego this year. It's called the Historical Romance Retreat, where people dress up in full costumes. In fact, I have 2 of my costumes ready. I have 2 more I need to order. So I'm going to have 4 costumes for this event. They have like a writer's intensive on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday morning. They have several themed like parties and gathering and events. So it's a really big, and I found this through the writing groups. Some of the big writers, Tessa Dare, Catherine LeBecq, are there. One of a writer who I'm actually pretty good friends with, she's starting to her rocket's really starting to take off. Celeste Barkley, who else has been there? I'm trying to think. Caroline Lee has been there. I just had the other, I'm drawing a blank on her name. Who else was there? I shared a table with her. Why can't I remember her name? Anyway, so it's a really neat event because there's lots of like really big names there and you get to kind of network and you get inspiration. And half the time you just see, for the authors who are attending, they're there, they got their, their tablets, their laptops, throughout the day, you'll find them. There's workshops. So, but I found this group because I belong to some different groups on Facebook. A couple that I recommend, again, I have these posted in my notes. There's one called Alessandra Torrey Inkers. They talk about writing and publishing. Because I write a lot of romance, I belong to what's known as the New Romance Cafe. A lot of great, those are readers and writers, very active group, just really amazing. And then the other one that I cannot recommend enough, they actually have like training resources for you in their files on Facebook for writing, editing, publishing, marketing, promotions, like anything on that journey. And it's done by Mark Dawson. I don't know if you guys read him, and Craig Martell. They're the ones who run it. Huge names in, I think one does like thrillers. He does kind of like the Jack Reacher style books. He does, I think that's Craig Martell. He writes, but I think his is, what is his called? I can't remember, but he does that style and has just really done well. And it's called 20 Books to 50K. And they have several different subsets, but you can start with the main page. And they have, and before you can even really join the group, they have like a training set of like 7 training modules that you go through that give you information that talks about what you're trying to do. It's an amazing resource. And so those were like my 3 main groups that when I was first getting started, I would go there for writing inspiration. I would go there for questions, for recommendations. I would just follow certain people would post stuff and I would just, okay, how did they do that? How did they do that? I just recently got some great information about how to scale up some of my advertising on Amazon. Just yet now I can't find, I know I saved it, but now I can't find it. So I can see kind of some different techniques on how to better manage some of my marketing and advertising. Just, they'll even do things like you write, you finish a book, you write the end, you take a picture of your the end and post it, and they do like a little celebration thing for you. So it's a really great positive, some of the groups do like, what are you doing Wednesday? And like something that you feel really good that you were successful for. So it gives you a little bit of accountability. You can find writing partners on these different groups, but those 3 are my go-to almost every day. If I'm on my social media, that's where I'm going to. There's a lot of other groups I belong to as well, but those are my 3. And again, I have them, one is specifically romance, New Romance Cafe, but the other 2 are cross-genre. So any genre you belong to. And so I use that to help me stay motivated. Then I have my own social media following, and I have my newsletters where I'm like talking directly to my readers. I try to interact with my readers directly. If I do giveaways, I try to engage with my readers. In my newsletters, I try to ask questions to my readers. For example, my most recent newsletter, I commented on how I was in the hospital due to a COVID reaction. And, I said, so I'm sorry if things are a little slow. And I'd been in the middle of a giveaway when I went to the hospital. And so I was just asking, and I had like so many emails back from, those who are on my newsletter, my readers, oh my gosh, I hope you're okay. And, so it was really, having your readers comment back to you and engage you that way. It makes you say, okay, well, now I have to write more for you because you're such a great reader. You're so, so that really helps with the motivation a lot. And then I'm going to tag this guy in right here. Okay, I'm gonna tag you in here, baby, because I was married before to someone who's very critical of my writing. It wasn't a real job. I was never going to make money at it. My teaching wasn't a real job. I didn't make real money. All just anything that you could possibly imagine as a negative, and nothing will shut down your desire to write like someone telling you it's crap. And that is very, defeating. And so when I met this guy, he does a lot of audiobooks. He's big into audiobooks, big reader that way. And I was very kind of impressed with that. And one of the first things he said to me was, oh, I wrote a book. And I said, you did? And he gave it to me. It was on a flash drive. And I read it and I gave it back. And I said, okay, we're going to work on this. I said, but you have some really good bones here. And he did. And he worked on it. And he was able to release it. But he's always been, do we need to pay for this? Let's up the cost. If I have to pay for something, he doesn't care. If I want to go to an event, he's like, yep, go to the event. If I tell him I can't, I need to get this writing done. He goes, I'll get my laptop. I'll join you. We'll write together. Find someone who's going to be your cheerleader in your corner. If it's your kids, if it's your spouse, if it's your best friend, but even my mom and my sisters, they were always like, Michelle, you always did weird stuff. So we're not surprised like that you write in your college and you do all this weird stuff. But you know what, it really is. And so I'm fortunate that, other than this one person back in history who doesn't really matter anymore, like my kids, my mom, my sisters, and then my husband have always been unbelievably supportive. My mom always wants gifts with my marketing and my branding on it. And she'll tell all of her friends and make them go buy my book. And she'll wear like sweatshirts with my book covers on them. And she's read all of my books. And sometimes I'm like, all of them, but yeah, there's some scenes that maybe Mom doesn't need to know I write, but that's okay. It's all good. A lot of moms out there read them. So I've been very fortunate in that, other than that brief period of time. And I wasn't writing in that brief period of time nearly as much. That was when I was in my I'm a slow writer. And I think that played a big role. So find your cheerleaders to really kind of help you with that. And then look at that. Now he's a published author because I knew all the tricks and I was able. So it's kind of weird to be a publisher. I won't lie. I'm like, wow, that's different. Okay. But it really helps with regards to, it helps me, you know, when I'm doing my own marketing and promotion stuff. So it's kind of, it is exciting. And then the last bullet point that we were talking about was like, the question that was asked me was like, how did I end up writing about historical fiction in Scotland? How do you do research? So my first husband, that's where my last name Dalrymple comes from. Oh, I will get to my husband's book, I promise. Let me do this last little piece and then it's gonna roll right into it. Because one of his upcoming books that we're working on with him is a historical. So it's gonna roll right in. I'm gonna segue right in because I'm not gonna bring him on, just have him be a pretty face in the background and not mention him. Because I'm super proud. I'm actually more excited about this upcoming book than I was about his first one because I enjoy the genre more. But my family, you know, I'm a mutt. I come from, you know, I'm Polish, Native American, German, French, you know, just you name it, I'm there. I'm a big soup. But a big part of my mom's family comes from the British Isles, Scotland, and England. And my grandfather's last name was Lee. So he's from the Lee clan. But my husband that I got married into, that's where Dalrymple comes from. And sometimes, you know, God just gives you a gift and you got to run with it. So I'm like, I'm keeping the name, I'm writing under the name, I'm writing Scottish historical fiction, Scottish romance under the name. And when I first kind of hooked up with him, I was in grad school, I had access to the library at the University of California, Riverside. And I just started doing all this research. I started doing all this reading, anything they had on Scotland, Scottish history, I just delved into. One of the things I learned, though, is that the name Dalrymple is not a very popular name. In fact, people will spit on you if you go to Scottish festivals, if you're a Dalrymple. It's like a cursed name because there was a huge massacre in, what was it, 1692, 1693. In fact, a new series of books, historical romance books I'm writing are going to focus on this because, again, God gives you a gift, you got to use it. So what happened is you had the Mackenzie clan, and I'm sorry, not the Mackenzies, the MacDonald clan, and they were not really going along with the king. And so the king was like, okay, you have a certain amount of time to sign this paperwork and say that you're going to be loyal to, you know, William of Orange. That's how this is going to work. And so what happened was at the 11th hour, the MacDonalds had their representative go and turn in the paperwork to the Earl of Stair, who was John Dalrymple, and John Dalrymple sat on it. And he's like, nope, they didn't turn their paperwork in. So to make a example of what happens if you don't decide to be loyal to the king, they sent a whole like army, essentially, of these clans that were closely aligned with the king, including the Camerons. They were the primary clan, and they went and they slaughtered like a whole bunch of MacDonalds because. And the thing is that all the dates showed that they did turn their paperwork in on time. So because this one guy decided he was going to, you know, play God a little bit there, it's the name Dalrymple is not very popular, but there's actually a province in Scotland called Dalrymple, it's just south of Ayr. And you can fly into the airport at Ayr. There's a small airport there, and then, you know, traipse through Dalrymple. So yeah, I know, right? And that's actually what they're known for, is because they went to San Bernardino. You had their like descendants go to San Bernardino and they started their McDonald's, and ta-da, Bob's your uncle. So because I have these like weird deep connections, I always kind of had these connections to history. I read the Outlander series when it first released in 1993, like back when it was a cheap pulp paperback. I mean, it was like nobody had heard of it. It was some weird book. And then I saw the movie Braveheart. So there was just kind of this huge kind of Scottish infusion. I'd always been reading kind of Scottish historicals and Scottish romances. You know, I was a big fan of Hannah Howell, of Joanna Lindsay, Lindsay Sands, Julie Garwood, Kathleen Woodweese. So the kind of historic bodice rippers of the 1980s and 90s, Arnett Lamb. So I was really loving those. And so I really just kind of got heavily invested. but I have not yet been to Scotland. It was on my bucket list, but then COVID hit. So we've kind of had to push some of our plans to the side. So I have to use a lot of like film. I have to use photos, drawings, paintings, references from historical texts to really build it. And then I have some people that I know who are from Scotland, or they've been to Scotland, and they've given me like tips or advice, or they're like, no, this was painted very well, good job. Especially in my first book, because that was my first time doing that. And one of the people who did a beta read and then an ARC read for me, she had been to Scotland. She'd spent some time there, some significant time, and she did a great job of making sure, hey, this would have been this and this would have been this. She goes, but otherwise it's beautifully done. You did a great job. So that made me feel good. And then I actually have my own kilt from my grandfather's clan. My mom made it for me back in the 1990s. I wore it to the big historical romance event in 2019. I wore it at my book signing. And then this year for Christmas, my hubby, being the supportive man he was, actually bought me the little plot of land in Scotland. So I have like my little 5 foot by 5 foot plot of land in Wigtonshire, Scotland. So I am actually Lady Deerwester-Dalrymple of Scotland. Thank you very much. I got a crown and all. So that's kind of, so the plot is just a few miles south of Galloway Forest, parked in the lowlands of Scotland near Ravenstone Castle. So I'm hoping to go one day. That's on my bucket list. We're going to be going to visit my plot of land in Scotland. So that's kind of me. That's kind of how I do my research, where I come from and everything else. And then some people said, so tell me about the hubby. So my husband's first book, he was in the military, he's a Marine and a police officer. So his first book, thank you for your service. Anyway, so he wrote kind of like a paranormal, where there was like a government installation, like a military style installation that was working with the Vatican and Rome to fight vampires. And he ends up kind of hooking up with someone who's kind of inadvertently part werewolf, and they form like this kind of rogue fighting team for the government, and they uncover this diabolical plot. So the first book is called Chain and Mace, and that's already out. And it's very different for me. Like his writing style is so different, and like he can write like very minutiae with like the battle scenes and like what kind of weaponry they're using and how they're using it. And with me, I'm like, he punched him in the face and he fell down. I mean, that's pretty much, that's a fight scene for me in my book. So I rely on him a lot to kind of clarify certain things for me. Kind of yeah, exactly. He's got that look. And then but his second book, do you want to talk about where your inspiration for yourself? I'm doing all the talking. Do you want to talk about your new book, what I'm excited about? Are you sure? Okay. But his second book it's a different series, complete takeoff, and that he's writing was inspired by, of all things, the Hamilton musical, which we listen to like it's like just continual recording. Gifted, best Christmas is the best present ever. Gifted what? I'm kind of missing something there. I'm sorry. Oh, a plot of land. Oh, there you go. That would do it. Maybe. Yeah, it is. It's an awesome gift. I'm sorry, ADD moment. Anyways, so we were heavily into Hamilton, and the one song my Mike's favorite song is the "You'll Be Back" by King George. And the guy who plays King George in the televised version of Hamilton is actually a favorite actor of mine. He was in Glee. He voices one of the characters in Frozen. So I was all over him being in Hamilton. And like I said, we listened to Hamilton nonstop. And he's got all the King George songs as like his first 3 on his playlist. But the song "You'll Be Back" just really kind of struck like a chord. And he's like, what would happen if we didn't win the American Revolution? We had watched the show Man in the High Castle, where we didn't win World War II. But he's like, what happens if we like didn't win? What if George Washington was like assassinated before we could do anything? And like, it just fell apart, and kind of Britain was still running the show. And I love that idea. It has a strong historical. So he wrote a time travel where you have these characters that are under kind of a really harsh British regime, and they're having to pay a lot of taxes, of course, back to, the motherland. And they find this piece of alien technology that they don't know how to use too well. But yes, we would with our cabals. Anyway, so so there's this guy who's like a very wealthy, he's managed to build a very successful business. He taps a friend of his who's a former police officer and says, hey, we're going to set you up. We're going to make you look like you're, the militia in, the American Revolution. and your job is to go back and make sure we win, so that way we aren't under the boot heel of England. And so that's what the story's about. And I'm actually really enjoying, because I help with some of the significant revisions and the editing and everything before it goes back to him and to some beta readers. And I'm really enjoying it. It's like a fun romp through history. So I'm really, really enjoying it. And like how he sneaks like modern technology, because he brings modern weaponry back with him. And so he's got to like disguise it as like the old school, rifles and guns. So it's really fun to see. So so we're enjoying that. And so as a result, he's going to even though it's the historical romance retreat, he's coming with me as a historical writer to this event that we're going to. So, so that's kind of us. That's kind of like what we're doing. So a lot of historical, references, we do a lot of that in the house. So I was told to go ahead and kind of open it up for questions, and either for myself or my hubby. It's all that's why I dragged them along. I forced them to be here. And so we'll go ahead and I guess open the floor.
Okay, do we have anyone would like to ask a question?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Of course, me. I have a question. When, I really believe in, I should say, by the way, thank you so much for all the good information that you gave us. And I can't wait to get that email and read it and hand it out to everybody, or resend it, because I know there's even more good stuff there. But the thing about dictation spoke to me, because I have found that when I do that, it really, really helps me. I can increase my word count so much.
Yes.
But what I do is I dictate onto my Android phone, and then I dictate into Google Docs, and then I copy and paste that into a Word document.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it's just crap, it's like, it's so horrible. You have to but still, if I go for a little walk, I've got, at least 500 usable words, and that's pretty fast.
Yes.
You have a particular app that you use when you're dictating?
Yeah.
I know you said Dragon, which I think Dragon's a lot of work.
I've heard that.
You have to train it and everything, but.
So there's two that I use. One is called, the one I primarily use is just called Speechy. It's this.
How do you spell that?
Speech, S-P.
Oh, Speechy. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was Skeechy.
No, Speechy. And then it's real simple. I just hit the record, and it just keeps going and going and going. Like I could, with other ones I found, you could only do a certain number of words. You'd have to open a new document, and then it just saves it in there. And then I hit the little upload button, and I can upload it to my Google Docs, and it's ready to go. And this one's pretty good about not garbling the language and making it like, there's been a couple things where I'm like, I have no idea what I was even trying to say.
I know.
But so that's one of them. And then the other one I do have, let's see, that's not the one. Oh, it's just called Dictation. And that's pretty good. So if my other one's glitching out, or, I need it, this is kind of like my backup one.
Okay.
But I think this is one of the ones where it limits it a little bit. But
well,
my
Speechy sounds
I think works the best. So, and then Dictation is my backup.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, and then there's Speechify, which I know some people love, and that's what you use, right? You use Speechify. My husband uses Speechify, which for some reason that didn't pop up on mine when I was looking for some, so I didn't end up downloading that one. But those are three really good ones for dictation, and then you can immediately just upload it to Google Docs.
Okay.
Or Google Drive, your Google Drive, and go from there.
Thank you.
So, I used the Dragon for a while when I had carpal.
Yep.
Carpal whatever.
Problems with my wrist, and so I used it for a while. And I found in the long run, for some reason, the words seemed to go through my fingers, not my mouth.
Yes.
And that may be because, like you, I taught English for a lot of years, both at high school and community college. And I guess I'm so used to writing on the paper, or on a computer in this case, that it works best for me to do it with the fingers. I never got used to doing that. But I do want to ask you a question. You were saying that in an hour and a half you could do 2,000 words, and which is amazing right there. It takes me most of the day, at least half a day, to get through 1,000. My question to you is, out of that 2,000 words, how many words are you going to wind up with?
Actually, I'll end up with more because my rough drafts are usually a little thin. And because my idea is I'm not crafting when I do that 2,000 or 25, I'm getting the words down. I'm getting them down as fast as I can. And what I'll do is if I know I'm using a crappy word or a crappy phrase, I'll put it all in caps. Or I'll just put XXX if I can't think of a word. I don't stop and think of a word. If I can't remember someone's name, it's Julie X, or usually I use XX because a single X might get caught for X-ray or something, but I use 2 capital X's. And anytime I have a gap, I don't stop for that. Now, if I'm in the mood for crafting, sometimes I'll do both. Stop and I'm like, okay, what kind of vegetables would they be growing in their garden right now? For some reason, all my books have gardens. I don't know. It's an overarching theme. I like there's conversations in the garden. People go in the garden because everyone in Scotland has a garden or you can eat. So I don't know. It's an easy go-to place for me. So I'm always looking for like what they would be growing in their garden. And so sometimes I will stop, or if there's a certain type of thing, I'm like, okay, I'm really interested in that. So sometimes I do get my ADD distracts me. But if I'm on my hardcore, I'm going to grind. If I don't know something, I either have a word that's similar, or I'm like, okay, it's kind of like this word, but that's not what I want. I'll write that word in all caps, or I'll just write XX if I know that I need to fill in the blank later. I'm not, at that point, I'm not like coming up with the language and crafting. I am just dumping it. I am just letting it dump as fast as it can go. And that speeds up the process significantly if you're not. Now, my husband's a little bit more of a crafter. He'll stop and go back and craft a little bit more, but he does have his where he just plows through. And so that's like number one right there on, how I can just, kind of dump, because I'm not stopping for I mean, I'll have a character from another book and I'm like, I cannot remember what their last name was in that book, or I can't remember their first name from that book. So I'm like, they're XX now, and I'll go back and look it up later. I'm not stopping. So, that's one way. And then the other one I really recommend, again, is that keyboard size. Now, if you've had carpal tunnel, I don't know if you have one of those cool keyboards. They have like the curved ones that can work with your hands. Ergonomic. Thank you. That word was not, that was going to be XX is what that word was going to be. But yeah, really finding a good keyboard that just makes your fingers flow, and then just don't worry about crafting. If you have that crunch time, because you can always go back and revise. That's like with the dictation. I don't care if it's crap. I can go back and revise crappy stuff, but I can't revise a blank page. So those are like my 2 big recommendations there on how I get that speed going.
That's interesting, because I tend to overwrite my first draft.
Mm-hmm.
And I write far more. And like if I write 1,000 words, if I wind up with 700, I'm lucky.
Yeah, see, I get down just like Ken, then I go in and then I develop. I look at my scenes and I'm like, okay, I really want to immerse my reader here. How am I immersing my reader? And then I'll go in and I'll add and I'll add and I'll add. In fact, my book that's coming out, I had a huge gap that I didn't, you read it and you're like, I know there's something missing here. Now I do take stuff out. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes I have duplicate stuff and I'm like, why did I tell people 14 times this? They don't need to know it 14 times. So I do take some stuff out, but I usually end up adding more in, because there's certain scenes I want to develop more. There's certain connections I want to make. So usually in those rough, again, it's just a dump to get the words out. And I'm like, I want to hit a certain minimum. Once I hit that minimum and I hit the end, I'm like, now I'm going to go in. Neil Gaiman had a really great quote for this. And he goes, the great thing about revisions or your second draft is that's when you get to make it look like you knew what you were doing the entire time. And that's one of my favorite quotes, because a lot of times I'll have a story in my head and I'm like, I'm just going to throw it down. I'm like a Jackson Pollock painting, just throw it down. But then I have to go and make it look like, now what's actually going on? What do I do? Now, some people don't do that. Some people do a lot of crafting as they write. And you will notice that if that is your writing style, you are a little bit slower, and then you do find yourself cutting and deleting more than adding. So it just depends on your writing style.
Any questions?
I just wanted to point out how much I appreciate you reminding me about pockets of time.
Okay.
Because I tend to forget that, and then I remember it every November when I do NaNoWriMo, because then I sit down and I'll having a word count, an actual word count really helps me. So then I'll think, okay, I've got to get to 1667 today. I have 1200. Well, I can do 467 if I sit down and, do like 2 little pockets of time. But when I'm not under the gun of doing nano, I'll waste a whole day. And
Well,
I don't think that's really good for me personally. I have to write almost every day in order to kind of keep going.
I like your idea of referencing NaNoWriMo because they say you got to write a certain number of words in a month. And there's a lot of great trackers out there. Like I use Scrivener for a lot of my writing, so I can get an idea of like what I'm doing in the course of a number of days. I can say, okay, how many words? And I can even put like goals on there and everything else. So Scrivener is kind of nice. That I don't know all the bells and windows. I can't format in Scrivener at all. I have yet to.
I know it sounds like a lot of work.
It does. I've seen that there are some things where it's like you can get a 20-minute video that shows you how to use like all the stuff, and I'm like, the 20-minute video doesn't even make sense. I don't. So they do have trackers, and so that's why like I recommended instead of doing like a daily, do like a weekly or a monthly, because I think those are more like you said. You're like, well, I only need to do 400 words today instead of saying I have to hit 500. Like for some reason, those arbitrary numbers are kind of crazy. Daniel, is that your hand up? Is that what that is?
Oh, Dennis.
Oh, okay. We had two. Dennis and Daniel. Daniel's got the little symbol up. That's I think I called
I'm sorry,
the little symbol.
Changed positions on me. Yeah,
Dan.
Dan.
You'll go first.
Dan? No.
Oh, never mind. He changed his mind. Okay.
He got shy.
Okay.
I wanted to ask about a couple of challenges that you may have been able to overcome.
Okay.
Some of the strategies and what strategies you use to resolve those challenges when you were writing. Please go ahead.
Okay. So some of the challenges in 2019, so I set a goal for myself to try to become where I was making a name for myself. I was getting my book series out where I was really kind of doing what I wanted to do. And I gave myself like a 3 where I was going to just plow for 3 years and I was just going to make it happen. And so that was my own personal. And then if I couldn't do it in 3 years, I was going to take the pressure off myself and just kind of write when I wanted to write and just keep it more of a hobby. But what happened is that was in 2018, near the end of 2018. But in early 2019, I was asked to teach in a full-time position for one of my schools, which meant I had to shift some of my other classes around, but I couldn't get rid of those other classes because I already committed to them. So I had to teach a full course load at one school and still teach my other part-time course loads at my other schools. So suddenly I had 12 classes I was teaching in one semester instead of my normal 6 to 8. It doubled it. And I was still trying to write. I was very scared. I won't lie. I'm like, this is kind of messing, I just set up the schedule. I just set up this goal. So one of my strategies was to say, okay, that 5-month period isn't going to count in my 3-year timeline. I'm going to start over. I'm going to restart my timeline. I just got started at the end of 2018 for that timeline for my goals. And it's not going to happen in this frame of time. I'm not going to be able to accomplish some of the stuff I wanted to because of this weird thing that happened. So I kind of gave myself permission to reset and say, okay, my 3-year timeline doesn't include those 5 months. So I kind of gave myself a little bit of grace, I think is what I did. And to take the pressure off, because I knew that if I was trying to write and, edit and revise and, publish and market and try to do it with my books and try to write new books and try to teach this heavy teaching course load, that was not going to be, I wasn't going to be a functional human being. That wasn't going to happen. If I did manage to write anything, it was going to be not very good. So again, and I also took advantage of those pockets of time. I had lots of in-class writing assignments. So I would grab and I was content with those pockets of time. I was content with some weeks if I got 500 words and I was shocked, and I just had to be okay with that. And it kind of stank because my first book had just come out and I was trying to do that. And it was really horrible timing. But I gave myself the grace to say, okay, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to restart everything in June and then kind of kick off. And so that's what I ended up doing there. And that was really kind of the biggest challenge that I really kind of encountered. And then the other one, and this is going to sound kind of like a funny one, but you guys might be kind of familiar with it, especially if you've already put some stuff out there and you kind of feel like you're doing pretty good. Stuff like this. Like when I teach at the collegiate level, like I know my stuff. I call it writing boot camp, and I can teach anybody to write. You could be the worst writer. English could be your 8th language, and I can teach you how to write. Like, I'm very confident in that. This, I've won some awards. I've hit some bestseller lists, but I still feel like, why does anybody want to listen to me? And so I have a heavy sense of imposter syndrome and now I won't lie, my husband helps me overcome that. He's like, no, this is really good. You're so good. No wonder they want to, and the like. And then I have a great writing community of other supporting writers who, provide great like feedback or ways to deal with it. But the kind of imposter syndrome can really get you down and make you feel like, why am I doing this? A small third one that I just thought of, because I actually talked to Catherine Levesque about this at one of my events, well, not mine, but an event I went to. I had been writing my whole life, but really I was in my like mid to late 40s before I started really doing anything with it. And there's some stigma associated with age, that you're too old to do something. And now granted, I'm still in my 40s. It's still, fairly young in the grand scheme of things. But to me, it seemed like I was late coming to this game. I heard people who'd been doing, this type of stuff since 2012, 2013, 2010, where they are really making a name for themselves using, Amazon and using, Barnes and Noble's, Nook and all that stuff. And I felt like I was, from that perspective, and then just the fact that I was in my mid to late 40s, I felt like I was late coming to the game. So I saw Catherine Levesque and I just kind of dumped on her because she asked me something and it just triggered it. And she goes, come over here, let's sit down. And so she dragged me to a couch. We're dressed up for like this ball that we're going to. So we're all dressed up in our finery with, big feathers in our hair and our fancy dresses. And so she sits me down on this couch and she goes, yeah, I was the same way. She didn't start writing until after her first divorce. She needed to make money. The only difference is she had been writing through her whole marriage. So she had a lot of books and she just started putting them up one by one on Amazon. And she goes, I was in my 50s before I hit any real where I had a following and I was making money and I was getting my name out there and people knew who I was. And I was getting my series going. And she goes, so don't let that get to you. She goes, you can be a great writer and have great success and accomplish everything you want to accomplish at any age. And so that made me feel good as well. I didn't feel so much like, I'm late coming to this game, What about publishing?
Okay, Howard.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was impressed that you got into a school based on writing a poem.
Oh,
And I wanted to mention that on August 25th, we have our 6th annual poetry event for the Diamond Valley Writers Guild. And if you're going to be a member, you might want to participate.
well, let me make a note of that. Is that on your Facebook? Because that's where I'm going next, is to the Facebook page.
I don't think it is, but I'll let you know again.
Okay. Okay,
Every
so
August.
it was August what?
25th. It's our regular meeting, but it's dedicated to poetry. And we usually have about 20 people who read poems, and you're limited to 2 poems. But I just wanted to get the word out because you're a poet, and it's an event not to be missed.
It's funny, I don't consider myself a poet, even though I've written poetry, I've published, I don't know, I guess that imposter syndrome, but I've got it written down and I'm definitely going to go and see about joining. So I'm excited about that.
Oh, great.
Thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate it.
Do we have any other questions? Dan has one now. Dan, yes. Dan.
Yeah. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I use Scrivener too, and I'm curious. It has built-in formatting for certain things. Do you use the built-in formatting, say, for ebooks or paperbacks or any of that stuff?
Okay, I'll admit that's a great question. I think Lynn had mentioned that as well, or someone about the formatting and figuring out. Scrivener has a steep learning curve, and I have not learned it well. I like it because I can easily move my sections around, and I can use the note card feature, and it helps with outlining. I'm not a strong outliner. I do a rough outline and then grow from there. Some people are plotters and they outline everything. Some people are pantsers. I was never a good plotter. Even when I wrote like essays when I was in college, it was always the rough outline. But I've heard that you can use it for the formatting. I haven't been able to figure that out. What I did is I set up 2 templates. I have 2 templates that I use on my own. I set them up in Word. One's my ebook template, one is my print book template. And they're already preset, and all I do is copy and paste the material in. It automatically formats in that template that I have set up. So I do my own formatting that way. And then I just have to go through and make sure that, my page breaks, and for chapters, so I don't have a chapter starting on another page. That happened to me more often than I'd like to admit with my first round. But I know Scrivener's supposed to be great, but it's just such a steep learning curve. And I already have these templates that I set up myself. So in my head, it's just easier for me I take the Scrivener document, I have it compile into a Word document. I do all my final editing and revisions in that Word document. I make sure I have my, my page breaks in and everything else. And then I just transition it to whatever template I need, whether it's book or whether it's a print book or the PDF or the ebook.
Okay. What did you use as a guide to set up your templates?
Really just, like there are different resources that like through Readsy and BookBaby and some of the Facebook groups that give you recommendations on what it should look like. Don't do what I did, which was just really trial and error. So it's not the best with regards to that. But what I did is I just read up a lot on like how your documents had to look to upload. I have used Kindle Create on Amazon. I have a novella series, very short novella series, historical series, and it was just so much easier for me to take it as a basic Word document and slap it into Kindle Create and have Kindle Create do everything for me. So I experimented with that a little bit, and it worked pretty well. And because they were so short, I wasn't going to do all this work of, tweaking the template just for these books. So I've used Kindle Create. And then most print sources, you can upload a PDF. I want to say Ingram Spark has recently set up where you can it's almost like the Kindle Create where you can build, and it was a miserably slow process. I usually just upload the PDF. This time I decided to use their resources and it was miserable. If it's the first time I'd ever done it and that's all I'd ever known, maybe, but I already had the PDF ready to go and I had to go back and do all this extra stuff. It was not, to me, it wasn't worth it. But so that's what I did. I just did a lot of reading on what the requirements were for the uploads. And then I just made sure that those documents met those uploads. And my first ones weren't that great. I had to go back and refix them. And, but that's the nice thing with kind of when you do the independent publishing or hybrid publishing, you can just go in, you can make a fix. Like I found a typo in a book and I'm like, I was pulling that quote to post on my social media. And I'm like, I have a typo in my quote in my book. Are you kidding me? No big deal, fixed it, uploaded it. It was, fixed in a couple hours. So that is the nice thing where if there is a problem with your formatting or there is a problem, and then the other option, it's kind of a cheap option. I do it all the time. I go to Fiverr.com, Fiverr.com, and you can contract out for all these independent gig workers, and you can have them format your book. You can have them format your book cover, because we can create my book cover, but certain like Ingram Spark has a different set of requirements than like Amazon. So I need someone to convert it to the Ingram Spark for me. I pay someone $15, bam, it's done in a day and I upload it to Ingram. And so you can get people to format your books that way. You can download formatting software. I think, I can't remember who it is. And they'll be like unique they'll have neat like templates that you can use with all this stuff preset and you can just copy and paste it in. So there's stuff you can buy, you can hire somebody to do it, or you can do really bad trial and error like I did and hope for the best.
That is appropriate for Scottish royalty to have people to do that for you.
To do that for you, yeah.
And to your Marine.
I know, my Marine back there.
Hurrah.
Hoorah.
Okay, any other questions? Well, hearing none, Michelle, I want to say terrific presentation. Really thank you for spending time with us. I hope you join and come.
Thank you for having me.
I do not know about the library yet. I know that Lynn called, they weren't willing to set up for August. But once June 15th arrives and everything changes, there's always a possibility that by August we could be back into the library. We can all hope so. I would like to think that we could be, but we'll have to wait and see on that. Otherwise, we're still on Zoom for a while longer.
And those lunches too.
That's true. That's true. Right now, I'd like to turn it over to Michelle for a moment and tell us about our speaker for next week, next month, not next week, next month. Okay, Michelle.
Hi there. And by the way, fabulous presentation. I really
thank you.
enjoyed hearing everything you had to say. It was fun. And I'm the one that distracted you in the chat. My apologies. It's just,
Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
my son also has a 5x5 piece of Scotland. So
Yay.
so he's Lord William Walter Bruce. Doesn't get much more
Oh, a
Teutonic than that.
Bruce.
He's a Bruce.
Oh,
Yes.
he stole my
he's a
heart.
Bruce. Anyway, so next month we have one of our own, Dennis Conrad, who is a member of the Guild. He was also on the board of directors last year, and the year before, I think 2 years, he was on the board of directors. Dennis is a retired professor of speech and communications. He's taught public speaking and English at Barstow Community College. He's also taught English as a foreign language. He is at Fort Irwin for the United States Army. So he's got quite a bit of background in teaching. He's a fellow of National Writing Project, and he's a published author in the short and sweet books, as well as recently got picked up by an agent, Authorized Me Literary Agency. He's going to be speaking on children's books this upcoming month because that has become his forte. Picture books, he's going to be talking about how to structure the 32-page picture book template and how that helps you with your story, methods of creating more, generating more ideas faster on what to write, the opportunities that are available with children's books, diversity in children's books, and marketing, scope of marketing based on the age range of your audience. So he's got quite a bit of really great information. If you've ever thought about writing a children's book or are currently doing so, I'd suggest you be here 1 month from now. He's a great speaker. I'm sure he's going to do a fabulous job. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. And on that note, we are at the end of our meeting today. I wish to say glad to see all of you again who I could see. Some of you I never got to see, just here. But at any rate, see you in a month. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.